Hi guys, and welcome to episode 1 of Lyfe in the Industry. We are so excited to be here with Mike Oelschig.
Nailed it.
And he is the Group Managing Director at VML. So I'm really excited to kind of pick your brain a little bit today. What would be something that people would be surprised about with regards to what you do in your day-to-day?
I think the biggest thing that people don't understand about the job when you're sort of at MD level or group managing director level, something like that, is for the most part, a lot of your job is basically reactionary.
Okay.
Ultimately my responsibility is to be there to solve the major problems for our clients and our people, right? So that's what I do. And those problems only surface when they surface. So I typically have a lot of time in my day where people come to me with issues, questions, concerns that I need to then come up with a solution for. So I think the reactionary side of it would probably be the biggest surprise for people. It's not as thought out and as structured as you would think and planned as you would think. Yeah, obviously there's a big part of the job. I mean, you have a business strategy and things that you're running all the time, but for the most part, it's filled with whatever happens.
That must be really difficult when it comes to actually having to plan out a day, because if you're so reactive, you could have a plan, but that could be completely disruptive.
100%. And I typically don't. I mean, I stopped trying to plan my day a long time ago. I mean, I typically know when I have to do something by and then sort of figure it out from there. But I don't plan my day. It kind of just happens. Other than obviously the meetings that are already there. But it just sort of happens, really. So.
And I feel like people have such a mixed set of emotions when it comes to planning. So people are if you've got a to-do list, people use a to-do list as a form of accomplishment. Versus I hear a lot of...
I do that. I do that sometimes. Look, I do have a to-do list, but you must remember my to-do list is very it's less tasks and more projects, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So for example, I need to build a proposal or I need to whatever. So it's more bigger things and that typically take much more lead time to complete. So it's less tasks, more projects, things I have to do, that kind of stuff. Clients have to talk to you and things like that.
So it's hard to kind of just tick everything off because it's
but I hear you though, that feeling of ticking it off, especially because they are such big projects, the feeling of ticking something off is...
But I feel like the higher you get in the industry, the harder it is to have a to-do list. Because your responsibilities get a lot bigger. It's not as easy as just design this.
It's interesting though, because I have a group managing director partner, Dan, who I work with, and she seems to be a lot more of a planner than me. So I guess it's also personalities. It's to how you operate. I've never been a detailed person, so I'm not a detailed person in my own life either, actually. Yeah.
And then what would be the best or worst piece of career advice you've ever received?
I think the worst career advice that we've all received is follow your passions. And I know that sounds controversial, but what I mean by that is there's a number of reasons, and I don't want to go particularly down this rabbit hole too much, but for me, following your passion can do a couple of things. One is it can ruin a passion because it becomes your job. And we all know work is work. I mean, very few people, if they won $100 million would choose to work. We do it for money. I mean, that's sort of the truth of it. I mean, some of us are lucky enough to enjoy our work, sure, but ultimately it is work. And if you're following your passion, it becomes work. So I also think it creates a unrealistic view of the real world in people's minds.
Yeah.
Most passions can't be monetized to an extent that gives you a good, life.
Yeah.
And even if you can monetize it. I mean, I was listening to a podcast, funny enough, with a very sort of senior CEO, and he was saying something similar. And he basically said, and he did some numbers, and I'm going to completely get this wrong, so I'm putting numbers out of thin air here, but it was something along the lines of, if you think about an international cricketer or an international rugby player, and look, how many of those guys play rugby at school? Tens of thousands. How many play rugby at university? Probably a couple of thousand. And when you go up, it's the percentage of people that actually can make a job, whether you're an artist, a painter, a singer, an actor, or whatever, the percentage that can actually make it viable as a career is so tiny that you end up living a not very fun life. So then your passion becomes something you resent because now it's not giving you the life that you need to sustain. So that's a couple of reasons. But I think the better advice in that context is follow what you're good at. Find what you're bloody good at. And that's different. And if that's the same as your passion and you can monetize it, fucking hey, brilliant. Sorry, I'm allowed to swear.
No, you can.
So I believe that find what you're really, really good at. Because, I was lucky in the sense that I found what I was good at. It certainly advertising wasn't a task for me. Strategy wasn't something I'd ever chosen. But I sort of landed up in advertising, found something I was really good at, and built an incredible career. And yes, I enjoyed it, and it's intellectually stimulating. But find what you're good at so that you can finance your passions. That's what you need to
I
do.
love that.
Yeah.
That actually like segues me perfectly into like where I wanted to ask you next. But what was a turning point for you? So you were strategy in the beginning, and then there was a turning point where like you then started climbing in different ways than you would, or I would imagine originally anticipated.
My situation was very unique because when I started as a strategist, it was a very small agency, but then I moved to Cerebro, which, for those who don't know, was South Africa's very first social media agency. So like the real pioneering social media agency in the industry. And that's where I joined as head of strategy. So that was when I really my career started, to be true, to be fair. And because of the social media aspect at the time, we were very much figuring stuff out. No one knew how to do this. No one knew how to do social media. So, when it was like a social listening report, we were the agency that first structured what a social listening report would look like.
Wow.
We were the agency that first figured out what community management is. So there was a lot of new stuff. So my transition really was sort of happened by the fact that as head of strategy, and without being trained traditionally in advertising, I wasn't sort of stuck in the textbook version of strategy, so to speak. I had no clue what the textbook version of strategy was. But so my job really was figuring stuff out. Like we would get a client to go, we need to do this. Like, let me use a stupid example. We need to generate content for Facebook. No one had done that before. So I was the guy figuring out how to do content for Facebook. What is best practice? What does it look like? What does a calendar look like? What is even a calendar? So because of that, I'd kind of become the guy that solved the problems. Like if there was a problem. So I did very little strategy, funnily enough, as head of strategy. I was just the guy figuring stuff out. And through that, I sort of became kind of the go-to guy for the CEO and founder at the time, Mike Stopforth. So he was I became a sort of 2IC go-to guy. And then when he left, I had no ambitions really to be MD. At the time, I hadn't thought about it. But when he left, it was kind of like I was the natural successor as opposed to I tried to become an MD.
Yeah.
I just was the natural successor because of the work I was doing in the business, figuring stuff out. And through that figuring out, became really close with clients, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, if you'd asked me years ago, going back to school or whatever, if I thought I was a leader, I absolutely would have said no, because I think what makes a leader when you're younger and what makes a leader now are very, very different things.
What do you mean by that?
Someone asked me the very similar question. They asked me in a sort of a staff meeting kind of environment, what would I tell my 18-year-old self? And my answer was very similar to this. My answer was the things that make you a leader, and a leader in a school context is really like a prefect, head boy, head girl, whatever it is. And the things that make you, especially in the school I went to, a very traditional boys' school, the things that make you a prefect or a leader are like you're the popular kid, you're good at rugby, it's very different. It's like it's superficial in a way, exactly. So to use like the American context, it's the jocks, it's the cheerleaders, etc. And I was a bit different. I was a very different kid. I did drama and I did sport as well, but I was different. I certainly wasn't a popular kid. So I certainly wasn't a prefect by any stretch. And so you never see yourself as that person. But what I learned was the things that make you a target at school and when you're younger, caring about being weird, caring about the weird people, being empathetic, being nice no matter what. Those things that make you a target are actually the things that make you a good leader later in life.
It's actually your strengths.
Yeah, 100%. And what makes you sort of soft or whatever the word is, I don't know. But whatever makes you a target at school or university actually is the stuff that people value later in life. So that's why I say I didn't think I'd ever be a leader because I wasn't at school. Yeah. But the things that made me a leader at school make me a leader now, if that makes sense.
I think it's really sad because like considering the fact that I feel like that's what happens with a lot of people in like, especially in school. I feel like confidence and stuff is completely shot, especially if you're at the receiving end of being like bullied and being put down because of these things that actually make you that outlier.
Yeah.
And if they were actually nurtured in those ways and not necessarily put down, would we have more stronger, more valuable leaders nowadays?
That's a very interesting question. And I think absolutely you would, because school, the trauma. I mean, trauma, what school can give you. I mean, I'm 41 years old and I still live with some of that stuff. I mean, it's kind of in your psyche. It sort of exists in your sort of subconscious without you even realizing it. So absolutely. I mean, it's a very good question.
Yeah.
I wonder if anyone studied that.
I would love to know that. Yeah. I would love to know that. I've seen that they did a study around like the popular kids in school and what the common thing was. Because, you have, like you said, you have jockeys and you've got your cheerleaders and you've got all the rest of them. And they actually said the one thing that they found with the popular kids was that they were friends with more people. Versus when it comes to like the quieter kids, they're very like segregated into like, this is who I hang out with.
Yeah.
Versus the more outgoing people are like just friends with everyone. They're friendly at least with everyone.
Friendly.
And I think
but I guess I would potentially argue, and maybe this is being a bit, I guess, biased, but I think the fewer friends but deeper friends.
Oh no,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think is
Absolutely.
yeah, exactly,
But
because
that's
they're your
quality.
people.
Yeah.
Because I think again, it's very much like the housewives shows. Like they're not
Mm.
really friends. It's all superficial
Yeah.
because they all go to the same country club. It's like that kind of stuff,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah.
But I think that's where it's saying. So it's like they're friends with everyone, but it doesn't mean anything,
Yeah.
right? It's just, again, superficial versus the
Just,
ones that
I
are
want
more...
to be in that group because that's the
Exactly.
right group to
Like,
hang out
exactly.
with, even
Like,
though I
how do
hate
I
these
do...
fucking people.
What do you feel like the biggest shift in leadership style you've seen or experienced within the past like 5 years?
5 years is probably too a short time frame. But look, I think leadership takes its cue from who they're leading. And I don't think leadership has changed so much, or the fundamentals of leadership hasn't changed so much as the people we are leading has changed.
Okay.
And I'm not one to sit here and bash different generations that came after me. You know, we all have our quirks and we all have our differences. And I have great admiration for much of what Gen Z brings to the workplace. So I'm not sitting here going, you know, they're lazy, they're entitled. I don't believe that. I think it's just different. I think the culture's different. They grew up in a different world. But that element of standing up for what you believe in, that's the part I respect the most. And because the younger generation does, and they don't take, you know, that whole kind of thing, go to work, suck it up, your boss screams at you, go cry in the bathroom, that's bullshit. And Gen Z don't take that. And I agree with that. So I don't think the fundamentals of leadership change. I think the demands on adopting those fundamentals has changed. I think we held a lot more accountable with younger people than in the past, which is great, which I think is amazing, and I think that's the right way to go. So I think the people we are leading has changed, and I think that has surfaced much more what a good and a bad leader is, because people are called out for it.
Yeah. So do you think the people that would be considered bad leaders are the people that are struggling to adapt to the new gen of
look, I think they probably would have been bad leaders in any generation. I just think, as I said, I've been called out more. But yeah, you know, leadership is a funny thing. I think the way I kind of try and simplify it is always say, and it's hard because a lot of people, you know, you make your expert the head of the team. You know, your best writer becomes the CD of the team or whatever it is. But you know, the big thing for me, as I always say, is the biggest lesson for people getting into a leadership place is. It's so easy to fall into the trap of being a boss. And without even knowing, you can be a hell of a good person. You can be a lovely person that everyone loves, but all of a sudden you have this authority, and authority can manifest in being a boss. That means, oh, now I can tell people what to do, or I should tell people what to do. And they sort of miss that idea of, you're not a boss, you sort of lead from the front and all those other sort of cliches. But I think that's where people go wrong the most, is they think that authority gives them a sense of hierarchy in a way that they can come down on people, talk to people how they want, demand ways they want, and it's bullshit. All
so like
at
power
the end of
hungry, basically.
But it's not power hungry. That's different. Some people are power hungry, but I'm talking about people that aren't necessarily power hungry. They just don't know what to do with the power.
Yeah.
It comes out in a way that they've seen. Oh, they've seen bosses shout at people. They've seen other people do that. Therefore, that's what being a boss looks like to me. Therefore, I'm going to adopt the same practices. And it's just not.
So basically like a misguided use of power.
Exactly.
Power, if you will,
yeah, exactly.
Right?
And sometimes it's completely unintentional. Sometimes it's just a misunderstanding of what being, now I am the boss, and I don't use that term. I don't like using that term, but now I'm using that in this context. But now I am the boss. That means I need to be a boss. No, you don't.
Yeah.
You really
just
don't.
Be a good person.
Just be a good person,
and lead, right?
people will follow you.
Yeah. I love that. If you're trying to move your way up like you did, from becoming a strategist to moving your way up to where you are now, is there a different thought process that people need to kind of adopt? Is there an attitude thing with regards to like putting yourself forward for more? Or...
Okay, I got you. Yeah, there's a few things. I think the one that pops into my head immediately is, and I was actually having this conversation with a few people last week, I think, is advertising is a stressful environment. You both know that. You know that. It's sort of fast paced, client demands. It's really, really difficult. So there's always a storm. There's always chaos going on. And the biggest shift, one of the shifts for a leader is you can't be the storm. You got to be the calm. And it's hard because, you know, ultimately you're both ultimately responsible. So, you know, the shit rolls uphill, as my boss always used to say. So you're ultimately responsible. So you have the most stress because everything falls apart. It's on you. But sort of as on the other side of that coin is you need to be the calmest person in the
Yeah.
room. So that's one of the biggest shifts. Is I think you can't complain. You can't go, oh, these processes are fucked. This is fucked. You can't. You need to be. You need to be the person people can come to if they are freaking out or there's a catastrophe going on or whatever it is. You need to be the person that people can come to feel calm, to have that calm. So that's one. The other one I think is the difference, and a difference in different services, whether it's strategy or creative, whatever, it might be slightly different, but is the move from, if you're a junior leader or you're leading a certain team or a certain department, you're mostly leading the work.
Yeah.
A creative director's job is to lead the work, make sure the work is great. Whereas a more senior person like an ECD, it's a lot more strategic.
Yeah.
So you're not necessarily focused on the work. You're focused on the process, the environment, the whatever it is to empower great work.
Yeah.
That's the shift. You're not looking at the work itself. You're looking at what is the environment that allows people to create that work. So it's moving from the detail, the specifics, the work, to thinking. I mean, when I shifted into head of strategy, it's the way I used to say it. It's moving from working in strategy to working on strategy.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. So it's being more
all
like
the way around.
proactive, if you will. So like
Yeah,
not
but
being
it's-
as much as like complaining as much as being a solution. Like
Yeah,
face
exactly.
problems,
So,
solve
so
solutions.
again, to the creative director example. So let me give you a practical example of what I mean by this. The creative director looks after the work itself. The ECD needs to go, do we have a creative culture? What are the barriers getting in the way? What is our creative vision? What is our creative strategy? How do we build proactivity? So it's much more high level, much more strategic, that then feeds into all the work, but it's at a group level or a company-wide level, whereas there's more junior leaders kind of leading the work. That's kind of the big shift, I would say, the two that I can think of.
I love that like analogy like of like just seeing the different roles, because obviously like I think being in the industry like we were, like just being a designer, like for me it's just like a creative director and a more serious creative director.
And that probably comes down to our previous points around people not knowing what it looks like to go
Yeah.
up a level. It's very easy to just default to what you did before, unless someone actually gives you. So
Yeah.
some people probably do that. Some people
Yeah.
just think they are now more senior creative
Yeah,
director,
yeah.
and they're
It's
probably
like-
they're thinking of it wrong.
Yeah, I know. I was like listening to you talk about it now. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, that makes a lot more
Yeah,
sense.
I mean, Fran is the CCO of Fran Lacken is the CCO of our business. Obviously, she gets involved in the big work, but most of her day is not looking at work. It's in exco meetings and strategy meetings, and trying to figure out how do we create an agency that creatives want to work for, as opposed to, is that the right social post?
I feel like, I don't know if you agree with me, but I feel like nowadays with regards to client expectations, this is kind of rolling into where we're going next. But with the work that's being created, I put a post out on LinkedIn the other day, but one of the things I really enjoy about our brief inboxes is that there's absolutely no boundaries. There's absolute creative freedom, which is something I feel like it's rare to find nowadays, with regards to just being able to play. And in doing that and in saying that, there's less work that kind of sits on your portfolio, because by the time it gets to the end of the line and it's actually out, it's been watered down, it's gone through everything else.
Very true. Yeah.
Actually being able to creatively express yourself, that work that originally came in, that you were putting into it versus what comes out, is no longer yours. It doesn't feel like yours anymore.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's why it's kind of difficult as a creative to be able to say that, this is my work that I'm really, really proud of. And I feel like there's that one or two, like I know within my space, like there was like a couple of outliers, but there was a lot of work that I spent so much time on that I didn't feel like I could put on my portfolio, because of the fact that it's just gone through so many, and because of client expectations and what they want. I think everything is super, super strict. But I feel like the actual industry is moving in the complete opposite direction. It's going a little bit more rogue now. Like
I think so too. I think so too. And I think the rise of the independents that all the networks are worried about, rightly so, is both a cause and effect of that. I think a lot of them are creating that work because they work for clients that allow them to use that work. It's very difficult in a network agency because by definition, your clients are blue chip corporate clients who have 7,000 marketing channels and 5 million campaigns and all these products. And so it is very disparate and very watered down in a lot of instances. Whereas the independent smaller guys, they get to work with the Yokos and the Pineapples and the Nandoses and those kinds of companies that can do whatever they want because they're also not tied down by global overlords. And I think the small independents are doing that great work, and then that sort of it starts building momentum about people seeing that great work. But it's also, I think a lot of clients want to shift to independent agencies, which then gives them a lot more power, and they kind of work together to sort of grow the independent agencies coming up, and they're doing some phenomenal work. They really are.
Is there anything that's standing out to you right now?
Look, I think, whenever these kinds of questions come up, you always have to go to the obvious ones, and the obvious one right now is Checkers. I
Checkers.
think they are, and I would love to look at this as a case study, not just on the creative work, but from a business side, from a brand side, because I mean, when I was growing up, Checkers was.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't go to Checkers,
No,
right?
no, it was
we
everything
did.
before.
I had a Checkers, but it wasn't the brand that it is now. Certainly wasn't at a premium level it was now. So yeah, what they've done with the stores, what they've done with the business, the brand, it's just an incredible case study for how to really, really grow a business.
I feel like they came out of nowhere. Like, I feel like it just started like skyrocketing.
Yeah,
Like,
it
I
did
think
though, because like, what was the first thing they did that I think it
was
might
the
have
Rugby
been.
World Cup.
No, I think it was.
I
It was
think.
just before that they did. Mark Sharman and Retroviral did something really cool for, which was a Netflix show, Tinder Swindler.
Oh, yes.
They did a mock Tinder Swindler
Oh.
thing that went quite wild online. So, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I mean, have you seen the birthday party thing?
No.
Oh, it's fucking wild.
Is it
I mean,
good?
no, it's not an ad, but it's just so crazy how a grocery brand
Yeah.
can be so famous that a kid in Pretoria, a kid in Pretoria did his whole birthday as a 60/60 themed birthday. I mean, that's wild.
The thing that I think took Checkers off was 60/60.
Yeah, that's done a
All
massive.
these have been trying for years.
Yeah.
This was like, you get
That's
an
true.
hour,
Yeah.
you have to book a slot. But
Yeah.
if you don't get the slot, you're only going to
Yeah,
get
that's
tomorrow.
true.
So they did that, and then from that, it just started getting more money,
Yeah.
honestly, and then they could do all those changes.
I think you'd be surprised how much. I think, and I don't know this to be true, but I would think, at least initially, that 60/60 did more for the overall brand than they did actually revenue on 60/60. Because I don't think it's as big as you think. I think it is now, but I don't think it's as big a market share of their own sales as you would think. Now it's probably a lot more than when I thought about this a while back. But so I think, as much as it is an incredible product, the actual 60/60 product, it did an incredible brand job as well. It did such a good halo job for
And
them.
they've just gone wild with the jet skis in Cape Town.
Yeah.
I know, and the plane and the scooter in France. Oh,
Yes.
it's just.
Honestly,
Yeah,
I
they're having
feel-
fun though,
but
and that's
that's
what's it. It's a
right.
serious grocery brand. I mean,
He's
it's
on a
such
jet ski in the
it's such a
ocean.
commoditized thing, but
Yeah.
they're just having a bit of fun, and
And
people
they're
love it.
cleaning up
And
at awards.
Yeah,
they are.
like I think, realistically speaking, so with that, I remember the conversation with Checkers started picking up more when it came to the rugby because of the uniforms, the kits that they were wearing.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah,
it was
'cause
that
then they
color.
did- they
were
did
like,
that
is that
other-
F&B or is that Checkers? Like, they were trying to
Yeah,
compare,
but then
like,
they did
which
that
one-
video,
Exactly. So
and
then,
that's again, it's
so
retroviral.
the
So
ball
shout out to
start-
Mike. I mean, they do incredible stuff with this kind of like tactical.
Yeah.
Because we think of tacticals, and I always say this to the social
Yeah.
team. We think of tacticals like, oh, Jacob Zuma fell off a table or something, and we do a quick post online, and that's it. You just do a post, and you go, oh, as long as we fast and we said something, we're on trend. Where it's opportunity spotting. But when an opportunity is done right, like the creepy teacher, also Mark Sharman. So I think he's a great example of when an opportunity isn't just, oh, let's create a post. It's let's create a video. Let's create something special in a day to jump. And I think that's what they're so good at, and that's what Checkers have done in a number of instances like that. It's not our fault. Was that the Jersey thing? It's not our fault, not our responsibility, or something, whatever it was. But just genius, man.
But they just
probably,
literally...
it took a day, probably cost them, I don't know, a few 10, 20, 30 grand, whatever it was, and they just get it done.
And it was
Amazing.
because they used that momentum that I feel like that allowed them to skyrocket the way they have, because like it was already on like the front of people's minds, and then they just kept going. And I feel like they used that momentum really, really well.
And it probably, marketers, as we know, are quite cautious people. So I think it probably also proved the point. Have a bit of fun, have a laugh, see the results, and then they're like, oh, you were right. Let's carry on with that. So it was probably also a proof point that might have shifted the entire marketing approach to go, we are a relatively serious brand.
Yeah.
Well, they were. Having fun doesn't matter.
Yeah.
People aren't going to think your rice is bad because you're having a bit of fun on your ads.
No, if anything, you'll be more like enticed to do that. You
Exactly.
know? Like, I want to use Checkers 60/60 more. I think like it's more of a conversation topic now, where it's like, oh, just 60/60 it.
Yeah, exactly.
Before it was like, we'll just go to Woolies.
And it's like they've like Googleized it as well.
Yeah.
Like, I'll 60/60 from Woolworths. Like I've heard people say that. I'll just get 60/60 from Woolworths, or I'll 60/60 the boozing or whatever.
Yeah,
it's become a verb, which is just quite an achievement from a marketing perspective.
I'm like, I love watching things like this play out. Like, it's so much more interesting than watching like something super serious it's an instant scroll nowadays, especially on socials. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, okay,
exactly.
nope. And then
But now, if you
versus,
see something from Checkers, you're going to stop.
I'm gonna stop and
You're
watch
going to
the whole
stop
thing.
exactly, no
The
matter
whole
what.
thing.
You know, it won't even even the image won't even capture you.
No.
But seeing Checkers, oh,
Yeah.
wonder what they've done now.
Yeah. Because
Amazing.
it's.
Did the
Amazing.
Dual trend. They just did the dual trend of a 6060 driver and the action figure.
Have you seen the action figure trend?
Oh, Jesus. Those things annoy me very quickly because they become all over my feed.
Yeah, that's all I've seen.
Yeah.
Every in-between ad is an app saying they can do it.
I feel like you guys are going to think I'm here for a Mike Sharman promotion exercise, but it's just you. I didn't raise that. You did, but he did it. Retroval did also. They've done one for endangered animals.
Oh, that's clever.
So there's a gap where the rhino was or whatever, and then underneath it has supporting. What's the word? Like when it's accessories, like supporting accessories that drove extinction. And it's like a little poacher and a little gun. And
Oh, wow.
genius. And there's one for a rhino, one for a pangolin, one for a brilliant.
That's taking it like okay.
See, now that I can appreciate. That's jumping on a trend and doing something interesting and new with it.
Yeah.
Putting myself out there. Hey, look at me. I'm an action figure, the same as everyone else is.
Yeah. No, listen. I saw that very quickly after my end of day, and I was like, chat.
I mean, it was cute the first couple
and I was
saw.
like, okay, let's go.
Yeah, the first three I saw were quite funny and cute, but then it just becomes.
What do you think brands are really valuing right now when it comes to like agency partnerships?
I think that's the word. The word is partnerships.
Yeah.
And I'm actually writing something about this. So, this word gets thrown around a lot. Partnerships. Some clients even they want you to be the extension of their marketing team, and you're a part of the team, and they use all this nice language. But it's quite rare to create. And I think the reason for that is it's kind of in the whole dynamic of the relationship, because partnerships by very definition are equal. You have an equal partnership. That's what it means. But with a client agency relationship, there's an inherent power dynamic that's wrong because the one pays the other. So that creates a master slave dynamic, or can create that dynamic. So it's already a bit forcing it because partnerships aren't generally made in that kind of environment where one person has the power because they pay, another person kind of has to do what they're told. But if you get it right, because from the client side, they need to see the agency as a partner. They can't just see them as order takers. But if they do, and then the agency acts like a partner as well, and this becomes for me to kind of go back to your question, what do brands value the most? I think the biggest gap that we as agencies currently have, and I say the biggest gap quite pointedly because I think it is the biggest gap, is, and you would have heard it, I'm sure you have, is that we don't understand our clients' businesses well enough. And it seems obvious, but in the past, we did. I think we did have a much more deeper understanding of both our clients' brands and their industries. And agencies, even though I believe the partnership idea needs to sit a lot more with clients because of this dynamic I'm talking about, but agencies can't just sit there and demand to be treated like a partner if they're not coming to the party to really understand their clients' businesses. I was literally in a meeting the other day where a BUD had been on a client for about 3 years. And was asked who the target market of their client was, and they couldn't answer.
Oh, wow.
I mean, this is what this industry has become. And it's almost like it's tough to blame the people because the environment has changed as much as well. We don't really have time. With all the proliferation of marketing channels, the speed of culture stuff, we're working at a lot bigger pace with a lot more marketing channels, a lot more briefs. So it's hard to get the time to understand your client. But all it's doing is just creating a bigger and bigger gap, a bigger and bigger kind of quality gap between what agencies can offer because they just don't really get it. How can you really provide creative solutions to your clients if you just don't even understand their industry? So that's the biggest gap for me. So use the word partnerships, but in order to get partnerships, the client has to have a specific mindset around not treating them like a supplier, but the agency needs to also come to the party and go, how can I be treated like a partner if I don't even understand their business? How can I expect to be treated like a partner? So those are the two areas. That for me is the biggest need from a client perspective, is just understand my business. And when you do, it stops becoming about how much does that post cost. It stops becoming about that stuff. So all the other frustrations that agency have around, race to the bottom budgets, being squeezed on everything, I promise you that largely goes away when the client fundamentally trusts you. They trust your opinion. They trust the work you do, because then it becomes about the value, not about the cost. And so that's, I would say, understand your clients' businesses. If you don't, reading the annual report is like almost become this cliche. Like, do you read the annual report? It's become almost this lightning rod for this idea that we don't understand our clients' businesses. But no one does. And it's literally there. They tell you their strategy. They tell you their results. They tell you they tell you everything about their business. And yet, probably 5 to 10% of client service leads, strategy leads, actually read that kind of stuff. Do you have a Google alert of your clients' news articles? So you wake up in the morning and all your client, and you understand what's going on in the industry about your client. Very few people do this stuff, you know. And it used to be obvious. It used to be the way we operated.
Like first
but now it's brief.
Yeah.
And now we just go. I mean, there's instances where you're working on a client you've never even worked on. You just get a brief, you do the job, you move on to the next thing. Yeah, I mean, you know absolutely nothing about that client, and you expect it to create. And this is the difference between a post and a creative solution, I guess.
I love that.
Yeah.
The difference between a post and a creative solution. I think I will kind of add to that. I feel like since kind of being front facing with clients and having to understand the business, like it's the first point of call for me, because I need to know what I'm communicating. Tell me more about you. What is your goal? What are your problems? What is like, I think the biggest thing for me is like, what problem do you solve for people? Like, what is your goal as a business? What I found is that a lot of clients don't actually know how to tell me that in one simple solution.
Yeah.
And that is where you have to say to them, like, listen to them talk about everything.
Yeah.
And then you kind of have to take all of this information, because at the end of the day, no one will ever be more passionate about their brand or their company than they are, right?
Yeah.
And they will never be able to, like, at least not like what I've been experiencing recently, but they can't just say it in one line. Like, this is what we do. This is everything we do, because they see all the value. And I have to kind of take that back and be like, okay, so there's a lot that we've got going on here. How do I simplify this? What is your one-liner? What is your, like, I don't want to use elevator pitch, but at the end of the day, you need to be able to communicate like that brand. Like, what are you doing? And having to go, and I feel like that I've taken so much time and I put so much priority in getting that right, because if we don't have that right and that like that overarching understanding into this is who you are, this is what you do, this is who you're serving, and this is the problem that you're solving. And by having that, like by getting that right, it takes a lot of time back and forth. Like the client needs to understand and they need to be on board with that, because then marketing and how you're communicating it, you'll be able to have that golden thread with regards to like, you need to touch on this. Does this communicate what this brand is trying to say?
100%.
But I feel like clients struggle with regards to actually
bringing it
down a bit, you know?
Yeah, but that also comes, in as much as I believe that there's issues on the agency side, there's issues on the client side as well. I mean, the juniorization of a lot of agency resources is happening on the client side as well. We deal with very junior marketers who are the representation of big brands, massive brands with huge revenues and things like that. So, so the junior marketers also are very undertrained, inexperienced. So now you've got two juniors on the agency side, juniors on the client side, trying to solve problems for a very complex business.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that a lot of clients can't really articulate what their business does or the value it provides. So.
No, listen, I've been chatting to like the CEOs. Like I made this company.
Oh, good
like,
for you.
And then they're like, I do everything. Like you can't just bring it down to me. And then, but that's also like part of the trust in doing that is being able to take what they do and being able to be like, this is what you do. Here's your one-liner. And they're like, you've been able to encapsulate my whole business into like one line, which is like.
I used to love doing that as a strategist, actually.
Really?
It was one of my favorite things, because it's weird because, with my legal background, that's ultimately what it is. It's just taking masses of information and kind of crafting it into a singular idea. So that's kind of how my mind was trained. So I love doing that stuff. I love coming up with that one-liner. It was the first strategy I ever did was for Hollard. And it was actually to define their why, like their purpose. Yeah. And that's kind of actually how I became a strategist, because I was a copywriter at the time and I was just given this project to do. And I wrote, and I didn't even know how to use PowerPoint at the time. So I wrote it out in A4, like it was just 2 A4 pages. And I just distilled it, came up with a line, and
that was
and became a strategist thereafter.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mike.
No,
you didn't even study strategy?
I didn't at all, no.
Oh my goodness. So it's just
I didn't know what strategy studying even looks like. I didn't even know what they would teach you.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I kind of fell out of that. So I studied strategy and then I came on for you as a creative and now I'm back into that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of really working those muscles.
Strategy is...
I feel like it's everywhere, to be honest with you.
But I've always said that it's very much like creatives. Like I am just not a creative anything. I'm really, really not. I can't draw, I can't sing, I can't do any of that stuff. I'm actually like, when I see paintings, I can't understand how human beings do that.
Yeah.
Like I'm just baffled by it all. but that, I think that's an inherent talent. I mean, and you know, this whole you can be anything you want to be. I mean, that's kind of bullshit. I mean, it's scientifically speaking, you
Yeah.
have inherent skills, right?
Yeah.
You know, no one can be Usain Bolt other than Usain Bolt. He was
Yeah.
born Usain
Yeah.
Bolt. You know, and I think creative strategy are very similar. Look, you can teach the theory and you can grow your capabilities. But I don't think you can just take anyone off the street and make them a strategist.
No.
I really don't. And same as a creative, same as many things. And I just believe I just have a strategic mind. I think very logically. I think in structure. I think like that. And that's obviously the antithesis of creative. So I think you kind of born a strategist, really.
Yeah.
And I just happen to have that mindset. And so when I did that first strategy, like that excited me, that way of thinking and how to distill things. It felt natural. It just kind of came naturally.
Yeah.
So strategy came naturally from a way of thinking. Then you need to learn the theory, obviously, like, you know, the actual social media, love line, whatever it is. You learn the theory, and you can teach anyone the theory. You can't teach anyone to think strategically.
Yeah. So when it comes to, so I know nowadays with regards to like people study to be here. If you're studying strategy, you're studying creative, you're studying design, whatever it might be in this industry, I feel like there's nowadays, at least from what I've picked up, is you have your degree, right? And you kind of go there and you're like, this is who I am. But I feel like nowadays experience is so much more than that piece of paper that you've studied like for 4 or 5 years for.
It is.
And I feel like there's a lot of anger that comes through with people when it comes to like, why don't I have that job? You know, I studied for so long and I didn't get that job, and I've got the degree, look, or I've got my master's, look. And at the end of the day, I feel like it really, really is down to like, show me your work, like show me what you've done, show me who you've worked with.
I mean, I don't recall ever looking at where someone went to university or studied in a CV. I don't think I've ever looked there. Genuinely,
What do you look at first?
I don't care. I look at where you've worked.
Yeah.
Look, in fairness, though, I'm hiring very senior people, so you know, you will have experience in that by definition that I'm hiring you. But you know, even going back when I was a strategist hiring very junior strategists, I don't think I ever looked at where you went to school, where you studied. Strategy is slightly different though, because I used to hire strategists based on a conversation. Because as I said, I would ask questions, not around, you know, tell me your CV, where have you worked, whatever. But I would ask questions that I knew would tell me whether you think strategically or not off the bat.
Yeah.
So, you know, the fact that you got the interview means, you know, you've done strategy somewhere. But it's in a strategy sense, for me, it was the interview. I would ask certain questions that you can just tell the way someone thinks, the way someone articulates the point, the way they think about an answer. I'm like, I would know in 10, 15 minutes, you're a strategist or you're not, or you're a good strategist or you're not. So maybe that was a little bit unfair to certain people. I don't know. But yeah, that's what I used to do.
Yeah.
That's just a mindset thing. So,
I mean, it kind of really answers my question, because I was going to ask, like, what makes someone stand out in, like, because I think right now the industry as a creative or a strategist or whatever, it's becoming very, very oversaturated because everyone wants to be here, especially in advertising.
You mean once you're in a business or to get hired?
To get hired. And then I think both, actually. Let me ask about both. Let's start with hiring.
So, I mean, it's too easy to say the interview, but I mean, you know, the sad truth of it is it ultimately comes down to that. Well, not ultimately, but for the most part, it comes down to how you show up in an interview. And then, you know, I'm not going to, you know, you can Google this stuff. I'm not going to go on about the 10 tips to how to do a great interview, but but I think that's really, for me, certainly as an interviewer, as someone hiring, it's just how you show up in the interview. And it's not just what you say, it's how you show up. It's the questions you ask. It's, do you seem interested? It's basically I don't want to use the term here, like, it's the brand you create in that hour.
Yeah.
Like, how do I see your brand in that hour that I've interviewed you? And it can be the way you say hello, the way you do anything. It all comes to it. It all comes to part of it. So yeah, the interview thing for me. But again, I mean, you're getting an interview based on your experience. So if you're in the interview, you've probably you've done, particularly with me, you've obviously done quite a lot in your career to get there. But
it's actually getting past.
I judge. Maybe it's not. I'm thinking about a bit unfair, because it's, you know, some people interview better than others, and I've certainly had people that interviewed exceptionally well that turned out to be not great hires. But sure, I don't know. Maybe I need to rethink this.
And then I'm making you rethink your life.
No, look, I don't know. I think that it does come down to the interview, or 2 or 3 or 4 interviews or whatever. So just be as prepared as you can for the interview, really. I mean, study the business, have good questions, and don't have the cliched questions, because it's so transparent where someone is genuinely interested, or they Googled and there's like, you must ask questions at the end of the interview. So they wrote down 3 silly questions, and you can just, it's so transparent versus they really have a want to understand certain things about
So
the
like
business.
authenticity is like
That's
a big
it.
thing that I'm picking up
Huge.
there, right?
Yeah, huge.
And then
Yeah.
when you're in the industry, so like now you're in the company, what makes you
So
stand
the
out?
thing that's, I think, and I used to say this a lot, I haven't said it recently, but I still truly believe it, is for me, the thing that I always noticed was taking initiative. And again, I don't want to sound so obvious, and I'll qualify what I'm saying. Because, I think you expect most people to do their job well, right? And if you're doing a job really well, you're a really great creative. Okay, cool. But there's other really great creatives. So all that's going to do is put you in a position to go, that's amazing. Zen does what she's here to do. I really respect that. Cool. But there's 10 other people who do the same, right? So you don't really, all you're doing is differentiate yourself from people who aren't doing their job properly, which is that really where you want to be, right? Do you really want to go, I can go home at night because I'm happy that I'm not doing this as shit as someone else. So table stakes is do your job well. Be really, really good at your job. But the thing that takes the next level for me is that initiative. And I don't mean initiative like work harder, work more. I don't mean that at all. But it's an attitudinal thing. And I guess it comes back to the previous answer about how I became MD. I was just there, and I was always taking the projects, no matter how busy I was, and I didn't have an agenda. It was just I was interested in it. I wanted to take on new stuff. I wanted to learn new things. And so I put my hand up for everything. If there was a pitch, put me in. I want because I want to learn that industry or whatever it was. So I was just so curious, and people that are curious and people that want to get involved and want to learn, that for me is really the people that shine. Those are the people that you can rely on. And if you can rely on somebody and you can just give them a job, and I know I'm giving them the job, I know it's going to be done well, I don't have to worry about it. It'll be on time, it'll be done well. That as a leader is an incredible thing to have, is relying on people, because it's rare. It's rarer than you would think to truly trust someone to just get on with it, do the job well, and I don't even have to check in. So that's the thing. I think taking initiative and just being that person that is reliable stands you above everybody else.
I love that. I think it's super like, I think it's the whole initiative thing, the way that you've just like worded it, I think it changes the whole thing entirely. You know, when someone says take initiative, they're like, stay until after 5.
Yeah, I don't stay till after 5.
No.
I don't believe in any of that shit. Like, look, because we pay you to be there from 9 to 5. We pay you to do a job. That's it. That's what we pay you for. If you're sitting there at 9 o'clock, I've done something wrong. The business has done something wrong. So yeah, I think in the hours that you're there to work, you've got nothing to do. And again, like, it's okay to sit around and go, I haven't got a job today. Sit on your phone for an hour. That's fine. You know, I'm not trying to sit here thinking you have to be constantly working, constantly on top of things. But just be that person that someone can go to. If I come to her and I go, I can ask Zen to do this, I know she'll be okay with that. I know she's got a lot on her plate, but I know she'll be happy to do this. I can rely on you. That takes pressure off me. That takes the stress off me. I can rely on you to go, no worries, I got this, Mike. Manna from heaven.
Yeah. I think there's also a lot of self-discipline that comes in with that. So if you want to be taking initiative, you want to stand out, I think there's the difference between passion. Like, if you are passionate about what you do, that'll come organically, right? Like it did with you. It's not like you have to force yourself to be there. Like, you're wanting to learn, you're wanting to grow, you're wanting to, take the steps to be better, right? It's like, be better than you were yesterday, even if it's 1% better. And I think that's the difference when it comes to like actually finding people that are valuable. Some people are just here for the job, they're just here for the experience,
and that's okay.
Fine.
That's absolutely okay.
Fine.
I cannot begrudge anyone that.
No, because that's perfectly fine. Some people are just made to be that, and there is so much value in those people too. Like, what are you going to do without them? Like, you won't have space to actually do anything else. But when it comes to those people, those outliers, it's like when you can actually find and see genuine passion. And I think that's what you're saying right now. It's like, when you're passionate about it, you're learning every day, you're growing every day.
But even there, like, even if you're not passionate about it, I still think there's a certain self-pride that comes with it. Like, and it's self-pride both in your own work, but also in being a person someone else can rely on, being a person that people see as a support and not as a barrier. Those kinds of things create a lot of self-worth as well. So I think, it's just... And when it comes down to things like raises and increases, and this is the stuff we look at. This is the stuff we look at. If you're comparing two people, or there's not enough budget to give to everyone, that's the stuff that really matters. Because you expect it to do your job, and that's all you expect it to do. But it's whether you add a little on top of it, which I can't demand from anyone, but I absolutely appreciate when they give it.
I think people are very comfortable within their check boxes. Like when it comes to like, okay, as a junior designer, I need to do this, and they do it. And then it's like, okay, so now now I do all of this. Like, how can I be a mid designer now, for example, because I do all of this already. But then you have to look at the mid designer and be like, but what's the difference here? you
Yeah,
know?
because people look too much at I'm good at my current job, not I can do the next job.
Yeah,
and
like, you're
and
not
that's not
actually
you.
ready.
You get promoted because you can do the next job, not because you're good at your current
Yeah,
job.
yeah. So you kind of start stepping into that other space, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yes, absolutely. Okay, cool. So I want to talk. Yes.
I want to double check that phone.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit more about Induxie. It's fine. We've got one camera. That's why we've got two. When it comes to freelance.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about freelance.
Okay.
What advice would you give to freelancers who eventually want to work with big agencies like VML?
Advice from what perspective? To get a job. I'm actually going to steal something that someone once told me when I asked him. Someone I used to work with that went freelance, and he did really, really well. And I asked him, how did you build up such a good client base? And it's such a simple tactic that I never thought of before. But he said the problem with freelancers is they look for freelancer jobs. What they mean is they go to freelance companies or whatever, or they look for freelance job spec and they apply for freelance jobs. He said what he used to do was he used to go to companies that were hiring permanent resources, and he used to go, I see you're looking for a senior analyst. Why don't I work for you in the month while you look?
Oh wow.
Simple.
Yeah.
While you're looking, why don't I come work for you and fill the gap? So that's what he do. And he said, like within weeks, he got multiple clients because the people hiring don't think that we need a permanent resource. Oh, we're looking for a permanent resource. Oh, that person can only join in 2 months. Oh, we'll suck it up. They don't actually think, hold on, what if I just fill the gap for 2 months, get the job done? So that's what he did. He just proactively did that, and then through that got all the contacts he can. So that's just a simple tactic that I would advise people to use. Outside of that, it's the same answer, really. I mean, if you're a freelancer in a business and we want to make you perm, it's for the same reason. It's you're reliable, you care, you show up, and the fact that you're a freelancer and you show up like that, even though you don't really have to because you're not that tied to the organization, well, that's even more impressive. When freelancers genuinely show because freelancers are even more just there for the paycheck, right?
Yeah.
Like literally there for the paycheck, you move on to your next gig.
Yeah.
So if you show you genuinely care, I want you, and I will do everything I can to keep you. So so that's it. Just act like a permanent employee. Be reliable. Show that you care. It's all the same answers.
Yeah.
I mean, none of this is groundbreaking stuff.
Yeah.
It just takes a mindset and an intentionality to just do it.
And then when it comes to like a freelancer so you've actually just answered that, a freelancer that stands out. So it's more so thinking long term, not just short term, like I'm here to do this job. It's long term with regards to I want to do more with you, right? So I think with freelance, there's very much a stigma of I'm here to do this one and that's it.
Yeah.
Like I'm done. There's no really thinking about future.
And be bold. I mean, I've had freelancers that had the balls to come to me and tell me that they believed there was a certain process that was wrong, or we can do things better as a business. And I was like, fucking hey, thank you, appreciate that. Thanks for the advice. Be bold. Find out if you think there's a better way of doing things. Say so. That just because you're a freelancer doesn't mean you don't have an opinion or that your opinion doesn't matter. Obviously, to a point. You can't go around telling people how to be better or how to do their business better. I mean, it's obviously a line. You obviously got to do it with tact, but be bold, get involved. Just because because I think in terms of the client, in terms of the work, ultimately we don't see you differently. I've got a job to do, whether the freelancer's doing it or a permanent employee is doing it. I don't care. It's someone's doing a job I need to do for my client, so I'm going to treat you the same. I'm going to require the same from you. So for a freelancer, act accordingly.
Basically, get your hands dirty.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you want to be a part of the company, be a part of the company.
Yeah. Like jump
start,
into it.
Just start.
Just do it.
And then that gives you a much more likely chance of the company going, oh, this person's a part of our company. Why don't we just make them permanent?
Yeah. Like we might as well. You're here all the time anyway.
Exactly. And doing great work and a part of the team and
Yeah.
So,
you fit in.
Yeah.
You just slot it in right there, and it's
That's
it
exactly
feels
it, yeah.
organic already. What do you feel like clients are still getting wrong about advertising in 2025? Or just getting wrong in general?
I could sort of think of individual cases. I'm trying to think at a general level. I mean, we had to go to this point, to this topic at some point, but sort of right now, I don't think and it's kind of helping us in a way, is the AI thing. So what they're getting wrong is they are very, very slow to adopt to what AI can do and should do for them, which is helping agencies in many ways, because it's slowing down the need for agencies to evolve, because we're going to have to very, very soon. The agency of yesterday is not going to be the agency tomorrow. Now, that sounds so obvious to say in an AI world, but we're seeing it already. I'm having meetings and conversations almost daily around how we are shifting already. But for some reason, clients are really, really slow on the uptake. So I think they are looking at advertising too traditionally, and that traditional advertising has now gone from what we used to call traditional advertising to the digital advertising is now very becoming traditional advertising as well.
We're stepping ahead
And
again.
so I think they're always a little bit behind, and I think because AI is so fast, the delta between how far they typically are behind things is just getting bigger and bigger, because AI is moving a lot faster than they are. So so clients are still thinking about AI as it can help you write a post, and it can, like when ChatGPT first came out and we were all going, oh my God, this thing's incredible. They're still doing that. They're not even thinking about the efficiencies. I mean, the agentic AI is another topic that is just blowing my mind for what it can do for agencies. So yeah, I think as a sort of in the right now, they're very, very slow on the uptake of AI, which I imagine most agency leaders aren't too upset about. But
so tell me more about this agenda. Like when it comes to, because I know a lot of people are stressing. Agentic, sorry. That was embarrassing. Start again. Okay, so when it comes to agentic AI, I know a lot of creatives and just anyone in this industry right now are stressed. Like, this is going to replace me. This is like, is there any use for me? My job is going to become redundant. And how do you feel about that? Like, is that a valuable concern to be having? Do you feel like it's actually more of a tool?
I would hate to say no, but yes, it really, really is. The biggest problem I think the agency of the future is going to face is this. So the new model, in a very simplistic term, in terms of where AI is taking advertising, is there was sort of an old 80-20 principle that is now being evolved and adapted. So, you know, the 20% of the thinkers, the 80% of your agency's executional, right? So that's how typically agencies are. You know, 20% is leadership, overhead, whatever. 80% does the work, executes on the work. That's very similar model in terms of what used to be just thinking and execution is now becoming agency AI.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the 20% is so in my mind, and one of our strategy directors has done a white paper on this. The agency of the future is almost like you've got senior thinkers at the top, strategists, creatives, whatever it is, because you still need humans, obviously. You still need someone to talk to the client. You still need someone to evaluate the work that AI does, all that stuff. So you essentially got the top layer of the agency that are business consultants, reviewing the work, dealing with the clients, running the business, dealing with the financials, dealing with the commercials, all that stuff. So that's the 20%. The 80% in 2-3 years' time is just going to be done by AI, all of it. The problem with that, though, is who's going to be the next seniors? Because if you're removing the junior layers, which it will, and I'm sorry to say it will, it absolutely will, it already is. If you remove the junior layers, who becomes the next mids? There's no one becoming the next mid who becomes the next senior. So the problem for me that people aren't really thinking about is, yes, that makes sense. You're going to have seniors, humans, AI, support. Who are the next seniors? Because all those people are going to age out of the industry. But then who's the next MD? If you haven't been a senior strategist because you weren't a mid because of AI, well, then how do you ever get to MD? So that for me is the 10-15 year challenge. It's like who's going to take over these agencies because all the junior work has been taken over by AI. So that's the biggest thing for me. So yeah, short answer is yes. I mean, I'll give an example of my wife. She's a copywriter, and she's passionate about this stuff. She's like studying it and going into AI. She's writing a blog about it. But she taught herself in a few days how to make, and I know you know examples of this, but I'm just using a real example from myself. She's not a designer, she's not a drawer, anything like that, but she's created an animated children's series. And it's beautiful and it's brilliant. She would have had to spend a year learning PowerPoint and Animation Studio to do that. Like literal years learning how to do that. And she did it in a week. So, and I'm just going because now we were worried about, but now they're going to take writers' jobs. But now where does design go? Where does animation go? Because this is all being done and it all can be done. And we had a sort of professor of AI at Wits or something like that. He's at Wits, but I can't remember what his title was. And he came to speak to us and he said that this is just the start. So every day we're getting amazed by what it can do. But he says this is like level 2 of level 6 of where AI is going to go. So if we're thinking now that it's going to take the junior roles, in a year's time, it's going to be so obvious that it's
Yeah.
going to take the junior roles
Yeah.
because it's just getting better and better and better. The
Yeah.
curve is, as we know, is very, very steep. So yeah, the short and worrying answer is absolutely, it's going to take many people's in advertising jobs, yes.
Do you think there's a way for, like, say for example, now you're a junior and like hearing that, I would be like, I would be terrified. But
Yeah.
how could I possibly take this opportunity and avoid myself becoming redundant in my skill set and my job,
Yeah, so
and
I
rather
think,
using that to my advantage to become more of an asset and a skill set that can't be replaced, if you will?
so look, what we still will always need is creative thinkers, even at a junior level. What I mean by that is, so I think the trick is, it's using, I'm going to go back to my wife example. She's a copywriter. If she stayed a copywriter, she'd be in trouble. What I think the young people coming into industry need to learn how to do is, obviously, you know, that's because how these things become a cliche so quickly. But it's become a cliche so quickly is, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to someone who knows how to use AI.
Oh, I love that.
So that's the answer. If you're a junior because you still have the creative mind, you still need to tell the AI what you want from it. You still
Yeah.
need to have a vision.
Yeah.
You still need to have an idea, but the AI can do all the execution for you. So my advice is, you need to be a writer, a designer, an animator, a videographer, just using AI to do all of that. But you need to be able to do all of it. Those are the people that'll be valuable.
Yeah.
Because if I can get a brief that ordinarily right now would go, okay, traffic goes, gives it to strategy does the brief, and so it gets passed. And we give it to the writer to write the copy, designer to do this, and it takes forever.
Yeah.
If I can go to even a junior, here's the brief, and a week they give me the campaign, well, fucking hell, of course that's valuable.
Because you can do everything.
Of course that's valuable, because now there also the cost effectiveness comes in, because a junior person's going to cost less for the agency. We're still a business at the end of the day with costs. So that's the task is, if you want to get into advertising as a junior, learn how to do not just your task, writer, design, whatever, learn how to do all of it.
It's actually quite ironic, because basically it's by diversifying you're going to become specialized.
Exactly. That's a brilliant way of looking at it. That's exactly what it is. You need to diversify to specialize. That's a great way of putting it.
Like,
exactly.
I think you actually like stop thinking like on one thing and learn everything.
Yeah.
And that way,
because then you don't have to work for a big agency. You can do what you're doing to a large extent. Like you can be a freelancer, but essentially be the marketing department of a bakery, or a small shop on the corner, or a more mid-sized company. You can be the marketing department. You can do the Instagram post, the copy, the animation, the scheduling, the media, the everything. You can do through AI.
It's basically
but you still need the human to run all those agents. So, learn how to use all the agents. So back to agentic, that's what agentic does.
Yeah.
Agentic AI is basically, because we understand AI in terms of dealing with individual agents. You've got a chatbot, a design agent, an animation, a production, or whatever. What agentic AI does, it basically creates an environment where it goes one up. So I'll use a practical example. So a client has a platform, they write the brief in. They just write what they want. They don't even have to write it as a brief. This is my business challenge, so we really want to do this. They can write it as however they want. Then what agentic does, it connects a bunch of AIs together. So you put it in the system, and I'm sorry if I'm not a technical person, so if I'm absolutely killing this definition, I'm sorry, but I'll just try to explain it in layman's terms. So then what it does, it goes, the briefing agent writes the brief. The costing agent does the costing, because it's been fed with all previous costing, so it's been trained. The traffic agent decides which resources work on it. Then the briefing agent goes again and then briefs each of those individuals. So that entire process is handled just by the client writing in. So then it automates the entire process, but the engine decides which agents to pull in. You don't have to go to the chat agent, then the design. The engine itself decides which agent is relevant, and it pulls them in. That's agentic AI. It's pulling all agents together, and it figures out which agent to use when.
It's basically an
AI
agency,
that's an
right?
agency.
Right.
That's the agency workflow, all done by agents.
Wow. Is
Scary.
this like I would imagine now with agentic, might be a little bit daunting for you as well, like for VML?
I mean, it depends. Look, it's daunting for me in the sense that I don't want to move to a world where I have to get rid of a bunch of people. I just don't. That part scares the shit out of me, just at a human level. I don't want to have to go, okay, we're a new agency now. We used to be 600 people. Now we decided we're only going to be 100. We only need to get rid of 500 people. I don't want to be a part of that. I just don't. So that's the hardest thing for me is the world I know we're moving to has some consequences to that, and losing a lot of people that you can use for AI is a consequence that I just don't really want to have to deal with. But probably will. So that's the thing for me. But outside of the human cost, I think it's incredibly exciting. For me personally, because I love new stuff. I love figuring out new business models and new challenges. But what I'm really excited about is I think it will swing the pendulum back from, because over the last 20 years, the power dynamic has shifted from creative to procurement. It's become a money game. How many pitches I've lost simply because the other agency was cheaper than me, even though our work was better. So the agency has become all this juniorization, budget shrinking, too many channels, don't have enough time, all these problems that we've had as an industry for the last 20 years. I believe AI is going to switch it back.
Wow.
So this idea of we don't have time to do strategy, we just next brief. We don't have time to think, we don't have time to be proactive. Well, AI is going to give you that time now. We've got too many junior people who don't understand the industry. Well, no, you don't have junior people, you've got AI.
Yeah.
So all the problems that we as leaders have been frustrated with over the last 15 to 20 years, I think agency is going to fix. So there's double parts to it. Very, very worried about the people side, but in terms of advertising as an industry, I think it's incredibly powerful.
Wow. I mean, like it's really intimidating, but if you use it right, I feel like it could be the biggest strength.
Yeah.
Like not just as a leader, but also as a creative in general. Well, creative strategist.
Because just imagine as a strategist now, instead of spending 12 hours a day in a PowerPoint, you spend 1 hour training or doing the AI. You get what you need out of the AI, but now you've got 8 hours to think about your client, to think about the industry, to read the annual report. As to go back to our previous conversation, you have time to think. You've got time to go consult with the client, to chat, to go talk to the product managers, go talk to the factory. You've got time to do this stuff now, and those are the kinds of problems I'm talking about that we've been so frustrated with, that we haven't had over the last 10, 15 years, that now we will. So there's a lot of benefits, not just the efficiency benefits and stuff like that, benefits to the industry itself that was dying in a lot of ways. The creativity was dying. There was a lot of problems with our industry that I think AI will solve.
Ironically, I feel like with AI, things are going to become more meaningful now because it's the works.
Ironically, yes, or oxymoronically, yes. Yes, I think so too.
Because you've got more time to think about what you're doing instead of.
But and also because we talked about social's just a noise of everyone and all brands saying all sorts of things. Can you imagine now how much content there's going to be on social that every Tom, Dick, and Harry can now create content on AI? So in my mind, now that the feeds, so now media, the mediocre layer is going to move up, because what was mediocre was just bad advertising or people trying to do advertising that can't do it. But now with AI, the line of mediocre is going to go up. So what does that do? Well, that pushes what an agency needs to do up as well.
Yeah.
So I believe not only is it going to be harder to stand out, but almost in a way, if you do stand out, it's going to be more meaningful.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be so much.
Yeah.
Going back to my bakery on the corner example, the lady who runs the bakery can do her own advertising now. So now every bakery, every florist, every small business on the planet is going to now have reams of content because they can do it. So it's even harder to stand out from the noise now. Even more important, we stand out from the noise now, which now brings back the human layer. So it's all just very fascinating and complicated and interesting, but we're going to navigate our way through it.
I'm interested to see what the job title is, because I think it's not going to be an AI specialist. It's going to be. I think it's going to be something.
Prompt engineer is a term that I've recently learned. Prompt engineering. Yeah, I don't know.
It's a whole new job, right?
Yeah. And as a typical technical laggard like myself, I'm really trying to keep my head above it. But I'm not used to being able to keep a line with technology like I'm supposed to now. Because I have to
now.
How to connect my iPhone to what I think is shit. But
now
it's a business. It's a business imperative, so I've got no choice. Yeah.
Have you ever had to completely reframe a client's idea because it just wasn't going to work?
Sure. Yes, I definitely have. It's like one at the tip of my tongue. I'm trying to remember what it was. It was awful. It has something to do with images and everything. Image is nothing.
Oh wow.
Image is nothing.
Okay.
It was like image is nothing something, and they tried to launch that in Nigeria. And I remember, and it was a VML guy from Nigeria. He was like, and he literally got on a call with the Sprite global lead, and he was like, in Nigeria, image is everything.
Yeah.
It's like you cannot have a campaign in Nigeria saying image is nothing when it's literally our culture.
Everything.
Image is everything.
Wow.
So that's one example where, and I think, as I said, it's illustrative of the fact that you can't, we get, you remember with Spotify and the global campaigns that we used to run, and not everything is relevant in every market. So that's one where you need to make sure that it's relevant in every market. So that's an idea of a global campaign. I can't think of this one. It was so bad. If I think of it,
Okay.
I'll
How did you
mention it.
adjust it though? Like, were they like receptive to it? Was it like?
Yeah, they
because
did. I think they did. I think it's so important to speak up in that instance, because I think it was the only country in the world where they had a different line for that campaign, because it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And it not only didn't make sense, they would have been insulted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And so it rolled out globally, aside from Nigeria.
Well, the campaign,
Yeah.
I just think the line was different.
So with that line, I'd be interested to see if that gained more traction,
Yeah,
because it was specialized.
I think he said he did. It was at a conference I was with this guy when he was mentioning it. So I think it did. But yeah, that's
You
one
got to know
example
who
I
you're
can think
talking
of.
to, right? Like, you can't talk to the
Exactly.
wrong people. What's one expectation you hear from clients that sounds good in theory but really ever works in practice?
It's probably something you hear from agencies and clients. I think the biggest lie that we tell ourselves and our clients is that we are data-led.
Really?
Yeah.
You have to expand on that.
Yeah, I will, because every agency goes into a pitch and says everything is underpinned by data. Everything we do is backed by research and backed by data. I mean, really, how many jobs did you do where you looked at the data first before coming up with the idea? I mean, unless it's in the brief.
Yeah.
I just think this idea of we analyze the customer data and we look at buying behaviors, and yes, we do in some instances, of course we do, particularly when it's formed in the brief, or a strategist just happens to be good at research. But for the most part, if we're honest, the strategist comes up with the strategy, the creatives sit in a room, they come up with an idea. Very seldom is the insight generated from a data point.
Wow.
And I think that's probably one of the biggest lies we tell ourselves.
People are going to be upset that you're outing us.
Well, I mean, as I said, it's true. But look, it also depends on the client. Some clients are just better at giving you the right data, or giving you an insight that's already backed by data. But I think if an agency says everything we do is underpinned by data and research and insights, they are lying.
Because at the end of the day,
it's not necessarily even a criticism of the agency. Sometimes you just don't have the time. Sometimes you don't need to go through that rigor because the idea is obvious, whatever it is. But this idea that every time we sit on an idea, we've got this reams of research and data feeding our insights exactly. So that's one. What is the question exactly? I went a bit of a tangent there. But I'm trying to think of another example.
One expectation you hear from clients that sounds good in theory, but really works in practice.
The right people for the right job is another one. While we absolutely try, we always are trying to put people that have the passion or the understanding of an industry or whatever it is on that job. But if we're really honest, more often than not, it's not practical to do that, because you can't just keep moving people. People have to stay on an account. If they're on their account, they've got work to do. You can't just go, oh, let's pull John in. He really loves cars. Well, John's got his own clients to work on. He can't just work on every time we have a car brief because he happens to love cars. You can't do that. It's just not practical. We have a traffic system that very often works with who's available. Obviously, you're not just going to put a random person on. They need to have the skill to do the job. But this idea of right person, right job all the time, I'd love to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I really would. But it's just not practical. Yeah.
People need to be accustomed to. So I know with regards to Spotify, for example, like I was like the perfect person.
100%, exactly.
Like I couldn't.
But now
it took me a while.
Let's say we were running a campaign for Standard Bank for a music thing. Bring Zen in. She's the music. Right person, right job. Zen should do this. But you on Spotify, you've got a job to do already. So as I said, it would be amazing if you could work on every music brief we had. Just not practical.
Yeah. I think but it's what I was trying to say with that is. In order to kind of take initiative and to start gaining momentum and confidence in yourself to do what, like, for example, like I started just running with things for Spotify. I was like, I want to do this. Like, let's go.
Yeah, you did.
I wanted to start running with that. I was like, I want to shoot content. Put me in. Like, put me in, coach. I'm here.
Exactly.
But in order for me to get there, I had to be on the account for a while. In order to actually like start figuring out how are things working, who's, you have to get comfy in the house first before you start trying to move some furniture around.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what it is. It can be super disruptive if you're using the wrong people and trying to like kind of disrupt what they know, because then it could be actually counterproductive. Like
it's super counterproductive, because then you can be know music better than anyone on the planet Earth, but if you don't know that business or what they're trying to sell or what they're trying to communicate, well, then it's it's pretty redundant.
And you have to take time to do that, right?
So and then the last one that just popped into my head as well. I'm going to get into trouble for these answers, but the last one that has popped into my head is every single client, not every single client, the clients that have a sort of arrogance about them. So like, I'm not going to mention certain brand names, but certain clients rightly have an arrogance. You know, they're a global brand, they're cool, people love working on them, they do great marketing, whatever it is. And so because of that, they have this, I only want your best people. But now you've got 10 clients who only want your best people.
Like, I only have
and
5.
and many of my clients demand it. Like they say, literally, like, Mike, is this your best creative director? Is this your best? Yes, yeah, it definitely is. But it's just not practical. I mean, every client obviously wants your best people.
Yeah.
It's the task of the agency to make sure that all your people
are
are
the
good
best
enough
people.
that can do the job, or can do the job well. But this idea of every client wanting the best people, well, again, how's that even practically going to work? So yeah, so there's a few things that just are unreasonable demands, impractical demands. But we do try. I certainly do try, and we certainly do want to come do right by our clients. But a lot of what they ask for is very siloed in, I'm the client, you're the agency, but they don't forget that you're an agency for 20, 30 other clients.
Yeah. Like, it's not like we're not here just for you.
Exactly.
And our resources are.
The job is to make them feel that you are, sure. And again, that's pretty much the core of my job to a large degree. But yeah, some things are just not practical.
Everyone is special.
Everyone is special.
Everyone
Exactly.
is special.
Everyone is my favorite child.
What is something you wish every client knew before they briefed an agency?
I think the thing how much goes into the work. You will know better than anybody. This idea, press button, content pops out. I mean, outside of the AI conversation, but traditionally, this idea that press button idea pops out is just, clients are like, I need this by 3:00. Something that takes 4 days, like literally takes 4 days. Even if you worked all through the night, it would take 4 days, but I need it by 3:00. That kind of stuff. I just don't think clients take the time to care enough about the craft of the industry. They want the best, they want to be viral, they want to be groundbreaking, they want to stand out of the crowd, but I need that in 2 days.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. Those two worlds don't work together.
So in saying that, when it comes to actually managing client expectations, I think that's something people either get really well and they do it well, or they completely miss the mark. And they kind of, instead of managing them, they just continuously try to meet them regardless of. And I think in trying to constantly meet clients' expectations, say, for example, it's like, we need this by 3. And then it kind of backlogs into the system where it's like, this now needs to be rushed. And I feel like that's where the quality of work can be complete, like the actual production line, the relationships within that, the actual quality of work. I feel like that can be super, super detrimental to everything involved, right?
Absolutely.
What do you think people get wrong when it comes to, or what do you think stands out when it comes to managing client expectations? It's obviously very intimidating to have to tell them no tomorrow, or...
Yeah, it's so dependent on the client, hey? Back to that idea of partnership and the client seeing you as a partner and not just as a supplier that can tell what to do. These are the practical examples of how that comes to life, right? Because if the client does see it as the partner, you are trusted, you are a team, then you have a conversation. It's because even that term, managing expectations, is assuming the dynamic is, I expect you to do this, you must deliver. That's already creating that supplier dynamic. It should never be, even that term within itself, is like, it's a conversation. We are partners here. We both want the great work to come out. Let's talk around why it's going to take that long. The sooner we start using that terminology, then it starts feeling in that supplier zone again. So if you're in a true partnership and the client sees you that way, you act that way, I don't think you ever necessarily need to manage expectations, because you have a proper conversation, and through that conversation, you know what is expected of you, you know what you're going to deliver, and as long as you deliver it on the time you say, client's going to trust you next time. And so again, that becomes easier and easier and easier, because you stick to your word, you deliver what you say you're going to deliver. But you're also reasonable with the clients. You obviously, you're fair to your team, you're fair to, because then also it's like, it comes down to a situation where sometimes the client service person will promise something, the creatives are going, you bloody mad. So again, it comes down to people working together. But yeah, for me, it's that. Depends on the client, but I just think that the ultimate goal is to not have to manage expectations. The ultimate goal is you should both have agreed in the beginning. It's going to take this long, this is the output, etc., etc.
So in saying that, so obviously now you would be, for example, sitting in that top line meeting where it's like you're having this conversation and you're developing that relationship of trust. It then now needs to be put into the system with regards to, like, these are the people on your account. Who do you think is most in charge of gaining that trust? And like, where do you think, like, because I feel like that person who, it's like that partnership, as you say, I feel like there needs to be the right person sitting at the end of that. What job is currently sitting in that role? Would that be client service?
It would definitely be client service. I think it's a combination, and I think when agencies get this right, it's a combination of client service, strategy, and creative. I mean, there's obviously other certain disciplines and departments that sort of support that, but for me, if that triad, the client service or client lead, creative, and strategy triad, and we call it the client triangle, if that triad has a relationship with the client, and that is the team, and ultimately it's the client, the brand manager, and those three people working together as a team, as a partnership, that's when the greatest work comes out, is if all of those three are aligned, all working together. But to answer the question, the one person is the client service. I'd say second to that is the strategist, because again, the industry's moved to a point where it's so executional. Strategists are there to deliver strategies, which means building PowerPoints. No, you're not. You're there as the strategic consultant to your client. So in some instances, that strategy relationship is even more important. BMW, for example, BMW, one of our clients, our strategy director or senior strategist has a direct relationship with the CEO. They sit for hours and they talk about the industry, and they talk about cars, and they talk about the Chinese brands coming in, and they unpack the industry, and through that the CEO gives them briefs, and that's the world we need to live in, because the strategist holds that relationship. Client service does to an extent, but so it depends on the client, but I would say those two are the most powerful, and the clients, because the client service person is responsible for just delivering, making sure we do what we say, because that's the most you can build trust on a one-on-one conversations and things like that all you want, but ultimately it comes down to, do they trust that when they ask you to do something, you're going to do it as you say? And that's it. If you continually just deliver good work on time, on brief, in budget, etc., then you're going to build trust automatically. But a strategist and client service really need to hold those relationships in my mind.
Is there a mistake you made that changed everything for you, or taught you something pivotal?
So look, I don't think it was a mistake in this traditional definition of the term. But what I think the biggest change I made was when the MD of Cerebra, Craig Rodney, said something to me once, and I always knew I'm a boisterous person, I guess you can call it. So the way I talk, I know I'm quite expressive. I was a drama student. I've always been like that. In my mind, I speak with passion, and I always thought that was the justification. Oh, I'm just speaking passionately. If you can't take it, well, fuck you. That's the way I talk. And a few people called me abrasive and stuff like that, and I was like, whatever, that's just me, whatever, gung ho. And then my MD said something to me once that hurt like hell, but the reason why I'm using this example is I think I made the biggest change. So to the second part of the question, was I was in a meeting with a client, and I just joined Cerebra, so I was very new, and we left the meeting. It was with Autopage Cellular. Do you remember that? Do you remember that business? Horrible business. No, that was it was just it was Vodacom, MTN, and Autopage, but they were awful. Anyway, so we're having a meeting with Autopage, and after the meeting, Craig said to me, he's like, Mike, why were you so angry? I was like, what do you mean I wasn't angry? I'm conversing with my client. He says, no, you look really, really angry. And he basically said something along the lines of, look, I know that's kind of how you talk, but you really need to look at it, because this is going to be detrimental to your career. It's like, from your MDC company you just joined saying that, it was incredibly hard to take. But I think what that made me realize is a couple of things. Temper the way I talk a little bit, because no matter even if I feel passionate, even if it doesn't come across like that, then it's, I'm ruining it, or people are going to think that whatever I'm saying is irrelevant because they're not like how it's coming across. So I tempered the way I approach situations, but I think more importantly, what it taught me was, it was the first time I really realized what Esnat used to say around feedback is a gift, no matter how hard it is. And so that moment was when I really opened up my mind and heart and whatever to real feedback. And not only asking people for feedback, but training myself to be okay with something that hurts, because it does hurt. If someone says negative about you, your personality, or the way you come across, or whatever it is, it hurts. But you have to open up yourself to it. You have to. And since that moment where I opened up myself to take feedback, no matter how harsh it was, every other feedback I've been given, because I take things personally. I'm the kind of person that does take things personally, but I've taught myself not to. And the growth I've achieved by making that shift in my mindset. So the mistake, so to speak, is being closed off to, this is just how I am and that's how I'm going to be. The shift was, you have to be open to feedback. You have to be open to feedback, and you have to teach yourself to not take it personally. And it's going to take time. You have to force yourself into those conversations, into those situations where you demand the feedback, and even if you cry or you get emotional, that's fine. But internalize it in the way that it's meant, not in the someone said something bad about me.
Mm.
No.
Yeah. So basically, just it's not personal.
Exactly,
right?
and it's not. And when it is, well, that's fine. Then take it personally and do whatever, react accordingly. But when you're speaking to the right people, it's not personal.
Yeah. Yeah. Take like you said, all feedback is
All
a
feedback
gift.
is a gift. It all is, no matter who it's coming from. Because even if it's coming from someone you don't like the feedback, you don't agree with the feedback, what says something about them then? Even that's a gift. If it's saying something about the other person. So yeah.
One of my best friends says to me, if it hurts, there's truth to it. And so if, like, for example, I'll be having really hard conversations with her and she'll be like, if what I'm saying to you is hurting you or upsetting you, there's a level of truth to it, and you need to look into that.
Yeah.
And
because it's
you've hit something for a reason.
Because that's when someone's call you out of something you already know. That's
even if you don't know and you subconsciously know it.
True,
so,
but you know.
Exactly.
You know in your gut.
Exactly. What are the non-negotiables? You're not allowed to say AI. What are the non-negotiables for success in today's advertising world?
I think that advertising agencies have a unique difference from corporates in the sense that in corporate world, for the most part, I think playing the game, the political game, is to your benefit in terms of going up in the ladder. But I love the fact that advertising agencies seem to be an industry whereby we are driving that change in. That is the opposite of what you need to do to succeed in advertising. It's not about it's not about stepping on other people to get to the top. It's completely counter to that. It's if you are picking up the other people, you're going to be the person to be promoted. It's it's counterintuitive in a sort of way. So I believe that and I've completely forgotten the question. I went on a tangent here, but I believe that the advertising world is. Yeah, it's you need to have that degree of support. It can't be that's not my job. I'm here to do this. You have to be a part of the team player, someone I can rely on. Back to that, not just relying from your bosses, but relying from your people. So the people that thrive in advertising are way less about what you do. It's how you show up. Those are the people that thrive. The Lindiwes of the world, who just the people that create the culture that people want to go talk to, the people that people get a laugh from, the people that someone can go have a cry on if they're feeling sad or whatever it is. Those are the people that thrive. So it's an unnegotiable is be a good human, be a friend, be a support system, help each other out. I think that is imperative in this advertising world. At least in an advertising agency I will run.
Mike, on that note, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
To do this again.
It's been really cool. Yeah, man. Why not?